Hello, in this video we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to coach parents that are in your program. Those are the ones that bring the players that are on your team, that come out in the afternoon and watch what you do. What are some things that we can do to serve those parents as they bring those young men to be involved in our program? One of the first things I think that's very important when you're working with parents is you have to communicate. I think anything you're not willing to say up front, you can't expect after the fact. So when I meet with the parents right up front, I'll talk to them about expectations I have regarding missed practices, missed games, things that they have to do as a family. We don't penalize kids for that stuff because one of the things you want to avoid as a coach is making policies you can't enforce. You want to make sure that you keep your policies simple and your rules easy to follow so that people don't get frustrated by them. Especially you don't have to enforce them when you got a really good player who gets impacted by one. So if you're going to have a kid be challenged about situations that he falls behind on, maybe extra time after practice, maybe time spent with you, just learning how to do something he didn't pick up at a practice would be helpful. And then talk to the parents about maybe being involved or recruiting them to be more involved if they have a tendency to be late. So rather than be upset with them or try to distance yourself, I would always recruit those parents to bring snacks or to be involved a little bit more so they had more invested to show up.
Sure. I mean, I don't think that is only in the context of, just being late and stuff like that or disinterested. But I think also parents that have a high expectation for the program or that want to be really invested in how things are going in wins and losses. Well, if they're a part of the process, they can see more of how things are going so that they don't feel like you're trying to stiff arm them or keep them too far away from how the program is being run.
Yeah, that's really good. When I identify dads like that, I'll get them involved in the scout team right away. I'll have them on the other side of the ball, helping out. Got to make sure they stay safe. But the idea is that because we only have 7, 8, 9 kids, we can't show 2 full looks on either side of the ball. So I'll have them involved in volunteering on the field, being over there, giving us a look, maybe even chasing the kids around trying to pull flags. That gives them something to do than stand there and critique our practice.
Right, and obviously have a plan with that. Like, don't just invite them to do whatever they want to do. Like, make sure that there's a plan in place for where they can actually insert and help so that they have an expectation of what they can and can't do, but they also feel like they're a part of the process.
Right, parents love to feel their value. They want to feel important just like the kids. And that's a great way to do that is by giving them a context to be involved. If it's a mom who's very excited about being involved, snacks are really the best place to start there, or to recruit them to get a group of people together to produce maybe a party at the end of the year or something that can keep people involved. We even had one parent that would do little kits for the kids, like had fruit in it and things like that they would bring to the game. Giving them something to do that brings them the sense of being involved is a great way to go about it.
Absolutely.
One of the other things I think that we have to understand is that parents are too emotionally invested to evaluate the talent of their kid. You can't really say that to them, but they're disqualified from evaluating whether their kid is good or bad. So you'll have some parents say that their kid is better than they are, and some parents that'll say their kid is not that good and they actually are very good. Don't try to convince them one way or the other. Just simply encourage them to support their son and to support the program. Don't get into long discussions with a parent about trying to convince them one way or the other because you're not going to win that. You simply just want to be in a situation where you're serving them to the end goal of the team, and that is to have a great experience, grow their son as a teammate, and grow their kid as an athlete.
And I think this goes into just a point for all parents, is that there's going to be a mix or a scale of parents that are passive to parents that are very, very competitive and want to see their sons do everything. And so understanding that there's going to be that spectrum of parents helps us to kind of, okay, so how am I dealing with this kind of parent, or what kind of parent am I dealing with? And how can I help them to understand certain things about what we're trying to do with their son?
Now there's a tricky one here I want to mention because sometimes kids overreact emotionally to how well they play or don't play. And this can be if you're coaching your own son. This is more common in kids that really want to overachieve. And when that happens, it's very important that we not overreact to the moment of what they're doing. Realize kids are being emotional, they're hungry, they haven't eaten all day, and we got to pay attention to those cues so we don't let ourselves get sucked in to those frustrations. Sometimes kids will act out on the field in ways that have nothing to do with what's happening around them. So we've got to be sensitive to that stuff and keep ourselves emotionally solvent to recognize that when it's happening. Sometimes a parent will yell at a kid on the field because work went bad. Right. Or you'll be in a situation where you've got a player who's overreacting and then yelling at their parent. I've had that happen. So you just got to be careful to play the mediator in that situation is good as best as possible. I've had parents call and say, well, my son wants to quit. He just wants to quit. And one of the things that we instituted that I thought this was helpful, because my son would want to quit too sometimes because I wasn't that great of a coach at times. He'd say, Dad, I'm done. I just can't do this. I'm frustrated. We had kind of a 48-hour rule. We just said, hey, okay, we'll start the clock. 2 days from now, we'll talk about it again when the emotions settle. That helped you, didn't it?
Absolutely. I think overall, just trying to diffuse the emotions of the situation where they tend to get high, you get angry, you get frustrated, you get depressed about whatever it is that's going on. Being able to allow time to relax the situation a little bit so that the head can clear and the actual decisions that you want to make start to come to the surface, I think is important.
Well, every single time we did that, you would always come back and say something like, well, Dad, that was on me. I just got frustrated. Or I would have time to think about maybe how I handled something and I had to change. So it was a great chance to have a conversation, and we didn't have to deal with doomsday every single time there was a frustrating moment.
Right. Trying to make decisions on the football field at the height of everything that's happening is typically not the best idea, but allowing for time and for space to be able to prevail in terms of cooler heads is something that's, I think, relevant.
Good. So encourage your parents to focus on the character of their athlete, not their playing time or their talent or achievement. Help them focus on what's most important that you can't control, and then tell them that, hey, let me handle the field stuff. And if you'll set those boundaries, you'll put yourself in a position where you can control what's happening on the field and they can focus on what's happening off. If something happens on the field that's a question for you or a concern, you can talk to the parent offline about that. Just say, hey, I saw Joey today. He looked a little extra down or more frustrated than usual. Might want to talk to him about that. Or he was talking back to me a little bit. Might be something to talk to him about.
Yeah, and I think this kind of goes into one of the points that we used to emphasize kind of in general is this idea of that character is the most important thing, not the wins and losses. So when you're communicating to parents and you're communicating about what you're trying to teach their son, knowing that the focus is going to be on character and not just how good they are as an athlete or how good they are as a player, and focusing more on the things that are going to be more relevant to the rest of their lives, I think is also important to make sure that we emphasize as coaches.
Excellent. I think we have to teach the parents how to be winners and losers as well as the kids sometimes. We have to example or model that for them. Not being passive when we win and not being not excited or whatever when we lose. We got to show true emotion, but I think it's important that we be the example for them in that. And finally, the last thing I think that you want to work with your parents on is encourage them to believe the best. In other words, it's okay to wonder if something didn't work out or you made a mistake, but get them to ask questions first. Seek to understand before they draw conclusions. I think we're all in danger of making conclusions about things we don't have input on. So ask them to come to you first before they tell somebody else or get frustrated. Ask them, open the door to your situation to ask questions after practice if they saw something they didn't agree with, so that you can have an open conversation about that.